Hello and welcome. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most incredible stories in modern history, India's long fight for freedom. This isn't just about an empire and a colony. It's a story about how a people woke up and forged a new nation. So here's how we're going to break it down. We'll walk through this epic journey in 5 key chapters, starting with the very first sparks of rebellion and taking it all the way to the complicated birth of modern India. Let's get started. All right, first up, the spark of rebellion. Now, you might think this story starts with soldiers and armies, but it actually begins with merchants. We're going to look at how a British trading company's hunger for profit slowly morphed into a full-blown empire, setting the stage for a massive conflict. At its very heart, this whole movement wasn't just a political battle. It was a philosophical one. It was really a struggle of ideas, pitting concepts like truth and unity against the raw power of an empire. Keep that in mind as we go. The real turning point? It all goes back to the Battle of Plassey in 1757. With that single victory in Bengal, the British East India Company stopped being just a business. Suddenly, they were a political force, a ruling power, and their influence just started to spread like wildfire across the subcontinent. So, fast forward 100 years to 1857, and all that simmering tension just boils over. The immediate trigger was this controversy over new rifle cartridges, rumored to be greased with animal fat, which was deeply offensive to both Hindu and Muslim soldiers. But that was just the spark. The fire started in Meerut and spread fast, with incredible leaders like Rani Lakshmibai stepping up. Now, the revolt was eventually crushed, but it was so huge that it completely changed the game. The East India Company was out, and India was placed directly under the control of the British Crown. The failure of the 1857 revolt taught a really important lesson. Spontaneous uprisings weren't enough. A new strategy was needed. And this brings us to our next chapter, the birth of an organized national resistance. And a massive moment comes in 1885. The Indian National Congress is founded. This was huge because, for the very first time, there was a single nationwide organization that could actually channel all these grievances, engage in serious political talks, and start pushing the British government for more rights. Now, what's so fascinating about this period is how the arguments against British rule got a lot sharper. Dadabhai Naoroji's drain of wealth theory was an absolute game changer. It wasn't just an emotional appeal for freedom. It was a powerful economic takedown that laid out exactly how British policies were systematically draining wealth and resources out of India. Okay, so as the movement picks up steam, a really big question comes up. What's the best way to actually win freedom? And this is where we see a split, with two very different and sometimes clashing ideas about how to get there. So, 2 major schools of thought really took shape. On one side, you had the moderates. They believed in using constitutional tools, petitions, meetings, dialogue, to slowly gain self-governance within the British Empire. But on the other side, especially after the deeply unpopular partition of Bengal in 1905, you had the revolutionaries. They said, enough talk, they wanted direct action, armed struggle if necessary, and their goal was nothing less than total independence. And no one captured that revolutionary spirit better than Subhash Chandra Bose. His famous call to action was electrifying. When he formed the Indian National Army, the Azad Hind Fauj, it was the peak of that armed struggle, inspiring a whole new generation to fight for freedom by any means possible. Then, in 1915, everything changes. Again, Mahatma Gandhi arrives from South Africa, and he brings with him a radical new idea called satyagraha, nonviolent resistance. This completely transformed the freedom struggle, taking it from a movement led by elites and turning it into a massive movement powered by millions of ordinary people. And you can just see Gandhi's strategy build and escalate over time. It started small, standing with exploited farmers in Champaran. Then it grew into the massive, nationwide non-cooperation movement, a total boycott. The Dandi Salt March in 1930 was just a genius move, a powerful symbolic protest. And by 1942, with the Quit India movement, the message was crystal clear. The British had to leave, period. And it's so important to remember that this was never just a movement of men, not even close. Women were on the front lines in every single phase. From the incredible battlefield leadership of Rani Lakshmibai back in 1857, to the powerful speeches of Sarojini Naidu that literally shaped policy, to the brave underground work of Aruna Asaf Ali during Quit India. Their contributions were absolutely crucial. And that brings us to the final act. After World War II, the world is a totally different place. The end of British rule in India is finally in sight. But this tryst with destiny, as it was called, would come at an incredibly high price. It was really a perfect storm of factors. Britain was economically shattered by the war. At the same time, they were facing massive pressure from within India thanks to the Quit India movement and from outside because of Bose's Indian National Army. At that point, independence was no longer a question of if, it was just a question of when. And then, the day finally came. August 15th, 1947. India was free. But this incredible victory was tragically and brutally overshadowed by the violence of partition, one of the largest and most painful mass migrations in all of human history. You know, when you zoom out and look at the whole century of struggle, you realize it was always about so much more than just getting rid of a foreign ruler. It was an internal battle for social change, for national unity, and, maybe most importantly, for restoring the self-respect of an entire civilization. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought to chew on. The two cornerstones of this entire movement were unity and self-respect. As we look back at this unbelievable history, the real question we have to ask ourselves now is, what do those two powerful ideals mean for the nation of India in the 21st century?